friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using You Are Sublime from Lawn Fawn, and I'll also be using the Reveal Wheel and Reveal Wheel Sentiments. I've stamped my images out on some Copic friendly cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copics today. I'm starting with my Submarine, and I wanted to color it yellow, of course, so I'm using Y13, Y15, and Y17. I typically prefer to color darkest to lightest, so I use that Y17 to add a nice shadow on the underside of the Submarine, and then I also added a little bit to accent that front and back part where the lines are drawn. Then I blended out with the Y15, and now I'm coming in with the Y13, and I'm going to fill in all the rest of that area, carefully avoiding those windows since I want those to be a different shade, and just making sure I have a really nice blend. Next I'm coming in with C1, C3, and C5, and I'm going to color in the propeller and the periscope up on top. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with the fins on the back of the Submarine, so I left them blank for now, but after I finished with the gray, I decided to go back and fill those in with the same 3 shades of yellow that I used on the rest of the sub. I just didn't want the colors to get overwhelmed. You'll see as I continue on that I kind of have a subtle rainbow color scheme going on, and so I just wanted to stick kind of to 1 or 2 specific colors for each image. Actually, all the other images just have 1 color palette, but the Submarine is a little more detailed, so it called for just a little bit extra. I'm actually using 3 technically, since I am going to color the windows in with the BG11 and the BG10. I just added that BG11 down towards the bottom and blended upward with the BG10. I'm going to move on to my Lobster. For him, I'm using R29, R39, and R59. If you watch my channel often, you'll know that this is my absolute favorite red combo. I just think it works so perfectly for so many different things. I'm starting with that R59 and doing some shadow on the left-hand side of his body, and I'm also accentuating those plates on his stomach. And then I'm going to blend that out with the R39. I still stuck pretty close to the left-hand side of his body because I wanted to save the majority for that really bright pop of red that R29 brings. It's just such a gorgeous shade. So I'm going to fill in the rest of his body, being really careful on those thin parts of his arms. And then I can move on to the coral, and for that I'm going to use YR04, YR07, and YR09. So I'm using the YR09, again shading on the left hand side just to keep everything consistent, and also adding a little bit more shading to the one in the back since it would have a cast shadow from the other 2 pieces. Blending with the YR07 as my mid-tone and finished with the YR04. For my seaweed or seagrass, I'm going to use YG07 and YG09. I'm just coloring in all those little leaves solid with the YG07 and then adding just a touch of the YG09 really close to the stem of the plant. I'm going to skip over blue in my rainbow because that's going to be represented by the water, and move on to the purple, which is going to be V15 and V17. Just added my shading again to that left hand side towards the back of the fish's tail. I felt like it got washed out just a little bit too much, so I added a little more of that V17. And now I'll just trim these out with the matching dies. I'm going to be making a reveal wheel card. This is actually my first ever attempt at a reveal wheel card. So I'm going to line up the die on a piece of gray cardstock, fit that little puzzle piece inside that die cuts the window, and tape that down with some post-it tape. I'll run that through my Cuttlebug, and then I will remove that little puzzle piece and die cut an additional piece out of gray as well. So there are those 2 pieces ready to go, and then I also cut out the 2 parts of the actual wheel out of some light blue cardstock, and I grabbed a brad that I'm going to need to fit these all together. I did make a little mistake right here, and I left it in the video to show you. I'll get to it in a second, but before I do that, I did take a couple of foam dots, foam squares, and added those around the brad. Those are just going to give it the lift that it needs to be able to spin to reveal your sentiments. So you can see that on that larger circle there are some embossed lines. You actually want to add the smaller circle to the back side of that front circle. You're going to need those embossed lines to be on the front. They serve as kind of a guide, so when you line up your panel, you're going to make sure that your embossed line is just above the window and just inside that little notch on the right. So once you have that positioned, you just want to grab the back piece, press that down into place, and then you can pull the front wheel off of the brad so that you're able to do your stamping on it. But first I'm going to stamp on the outside of the card. You want to make sure to do this before it's assembled, otherwise it'll be really difficult to stamp on. I'm using Lawn Fawn's Hippo ink to stamp "Hope Your Day Is" above that window cutout. And I stamp that down twice to get a really good impression. And while I have my MISTI out, I'm also going to stamp on the inside of my card. I'm using the scuba diver from You Are Sublime, as well as another little plant and the heart bubbles and the extra sentiment in there as well. I've added more foam squares all around that panel, making sure that none of them are going to block the spinning mechanism, so it'll be still able to spin freely, but it'll be well supported. So I've marked the north, south, east, and west, or 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock positions on that wheel. And now I'm lining them up with the notch on the outside and tracing that window onto that circular panel so that I can make sure that I'm going to get my sentiments that I'm going to stamp all lined up nicely. So I just keep spinning that wheel until I see my little pencil mark and have that perfectly centered, and then I go ahead and trace that window until I have all 4 done. Then I can go ahead and open that brad once again, pull that off, set the back panel aside, and I'm going to line up everything in my MISTI so that I don't have to stamp out 4 sentiments. I can just do them all with one pass. I'm still using that Hippo ink, so I'm going to stamp it down a second time so that I get a really good impression and so that it matches the sentiment on the outside of the card. I erased all of my pencil marks, and now I can go ahead and pop that back onto the brad. Sometimes it's easier just to pick it up so you can see and line that up, and then just close the prongs of the brad. And now I'm going to peel off all those release papers and line my front panel up with the back one, just making sure that all of the sides are perfectly straight. Smooth that down and then give that little spinner wheel a test and make sure that everything is working properly. I've cut a porthole with the Lawn Fawn porthole frames out of some gray and some aqua blue cardstock. I'm going to use the center part of the aqua and the outer part of the gray. I'm just going to hold those together with a little bit of post-it tape. This is just left over from my die cutting. And I'm going to grab all of my images, starting with my yellow submarine. Since that's my central image, I'm going to get that right where I want it, and then I'm going to start building the rest of my scene around it. I'm going to add some of that seaweed down below and that little bit of coral right in front of that, and then I'll have my lobster over on the left hand side. The purple fish is going to go on the top right, and I'm going to tuck the tail right behind the periscope just a little bit there. And then I'm actually going to pop that back out and trim off anything that is hanging over the sides. I want that to fit perfectly inside that porthole so that it kind of looks like you're looking through it. So I don't want anything hanging over the edges. And then I can just fit that back into place. And then instead of popping out all of those little die cut circles and leaving just the holes, I decided to color them in so that they look like rivets. So I just grabbed a W7 marker and I'm carefully coloring all of those in. Just using a really quick little stroke with the very tip of my marker. Then I'll grab my reveal wheel panel and glue my focal panel down to that using the Lawn Fawn glue tube and making sure to get some of that glue on the outside edge of that porthole frame as well. And then I'm just going to line that up on the lower half of my card. I wanted to jazz up my card base just a little bit, so I took some of the bubbles from You Are Sublime, and I actually made a mistake and accidentally stamped the cluster of 3 bubbles upside down, so it was the back of the stamp. So I'm going to fix that. Most of it won't show anyway, but there is a solid bubble in that set, so I just added that into my little trio there, and I'm going to continue to stamp those around the outside edge using that hippo ink. And so it's just going to add a little bit of something on the perimeter of the card, and most of that mistake that's up at the top is going to get covered up anyway, so you're not going to be able to tell that anything ever happened there once it's all put together. So I'll just continue stamping that around the rest of the card, and then I'm going to grab that panel and glue that down into place. Still using that Lawn Fawn glue tube. I've been testing this out for a while lately, and I really do like it. It gives you a really nice thin bead of glue and a super strong hold as well. So I'm just going to line that up on my card front, and then I'm going to take the little arrow that is included in the reveal wheel die set, and I'm going to add that right next to the wheel in that little notch so that the recipient knows what they're supposed to do. I'll lift that up to the camera and give that wheel a spin so that you can read all of the 4 sentiments that are stamped inside. I think this turned out super fun, and I'll give you a peek at the inside as well. Like I mentioned, this was my very first attempt at making a reveal wheel card, and to my surprise, it was pretty quick and easy. So let me know in the comments down below if you would give this a try. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would love to have your support. You can also go ahead and ring that notification bell if you want to be sure that my videos always end up in your feed. Here's 2 extra videos you may also be interested in. Hopefully those will tide you over until my next one. Until then, I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.